take a look at this. So Carney's making the big announcement. This is part of the, Build Back Canada plan, or the One Canadian Economy, or whatever they friggin' called it. It's, there's so many flaws to it that it just seems like one big disastrous ploy that is trying to entice Canadians to say that Mark Carney is still trying to fight for you guys and elbows up and blah, blah, blah. But we're starting to see where the exploitation comes in. So one of them being that he is committed to all this housing. That's his big goal. He wants to build all these big, giant size, domestic homes, factory built homes on federal land in an extraordinary amount of time. And they're putting all this money, and how great an investment that's going to be. We're going to use Canadian material. We're going to use Canadian power. Canada, rah! And this is coming out of the Ottawa Citizen, saying Carney government launches new federal housing agency, new affordable housing in Ottawa. Ottawa is one of the 6 cities initially selected as sites for the development of 4,000 factory-built homes on federal land. Now, some have speculated that it means container homes. Some have said that could be, tiny homes. I don't know exactly what they mean by factory-built. Again, I think, in the highlight of it, that a lot of people that are in need of shelter and need of home, they're not going to be, complaining about factory home. I get why people might be upset about it. I get why there's a bit of frustration that, why is Mark Carney just completely going to container shipping homes instead of, building regular homes. But at the same time, for the people that are desperately in need of housing, of an actual tangible roof over their head, it's not like they're going to be complaining that they're going to be living in a small apartment or a small facility, that they're just lucky to have a place where they can have shelter and have the ability to survive. But here, this is where it gets really, really wacky. A new federal agency called Build Canada Homes is being launched to supercharge the construction of affordable housing in cities like Ottawa, with a goal to fight the housing crisis by building them at scale. It kind of throws me off a bit that they have to create a new federal agency to build houses. It kind of smells a bit of money laundering scheme, that they have to create this new branch of government bodies and an agency, and they're going to have to get representatives and hire people and have, offices in Ottawa to build housing. It kind of seems suspicious that they have to create a full new agency just to build more homes, as if we couldn't build homes before this. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Sunday that the federal government will provide an initial $13 billion to build more affordable housing projects across the country. 6 cities were initially selected as sites for the development of 4,000 factory-built homes on federal land, with the capacity to scale up to 45,000. Ottawa is one of them. Around $1 billion will go towards transportational and supportive housing for low-income households in partnership with provinces, territories, municipalities, and Indigenous communities. Carney said that these projects will try to address the housing crisis in cities like Ottawa. Another $1.5 billion will go towards the Canada Rental Protection Fund, which will acquire at-risk community rental apartment buildings and help make them affordable for long-term. The fund was initially announced by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as part of the budget of 2024. Carney said the announcement is only the beginning of a series of commitments and promises to build more affordable homes in Canada. And the reason I kind of shrug at this and kind of, grit my teeth is because they've been saying this for over a decade now. And considering I'm in one of those cities where they constantly promise affordable housing, and yet we have still not seen full development. They're starting to work on one of the many lands that they're claiming is going to be the home of affordable housing. It makes me very kind of, irritated to keep hearing this false promise that, oh, affordable housing, we're just going to talk to this construction crew. We're just going to talk to our developers. We're going to talk to some NGOs about this, because they're definitely not in the pocket of exacerbating a problem or a crisis for their own agenda, for their own money, so that they can capitalize off it. They would never do something like that. Ottawa Citizen continues to say, young Canadians are doing everything right. They're studying hard, finding a job, saving hard, yet too many of them, rent is unaffordable and home ownership feels entirely out of reach. Across the country, it takes nearly 4 years for first-time home buyers to save for a down payment. In a market such as Toronto or Vancouver's, it's even larger, he told reporters at Sunday's news conference in Nepean. Yeah, it's even more of a problem when you bring in more migrants, illegal migrants, for corporations to then take abuse of them for temporary foreign labor, and undermining young Canadians who are trying to work their ass off to try to save money, to have the ability to put a down payment on a house, and you just sideline them by allowing more corporations to exploit your open door border policy. So that also adds more fuel to the fire. And now, as you're bringing in more and more people into the country, that's also going to incorporate the problem with housing. Is now you're bringing in more people. We don't have enough homes for the people that are already in this country. How are you going to incorporate more people into the country? Especially ones that we don't have full documentation or the legality to allow them to be in this country. That's why immigration's tied into this. And that's why it's such a major problem. But Mark Carney's dead focus on builds. Canada first. Yeah. We're going to do something about this. And we've shown before that Mark Carney, kind of the reason why he's hinting at these factory-built homes is because we know that Brookfield, his former placement, his former asset firm, is looking to acquire a construction company that manufactures these container homes and factory-built homes. So Brookfield plays a big factor into these affordable housing projects. Funny all of a sudden, now we start caring about housing as soon as Mark Carney is selected to be prime minister, who happened to be a member of Brookfield, who happens to be a member of the Citizen Initiative NGO that is bringing in more temporary foreign workers, exploiting our immigration crisis, and creating housing deliberately so that Brookfield can profit off of. Go figure. So here, Government EXE is corrupt. Mark Carney says housing is too expensive, so it's time to mass produce homes so Canadians can live in factory-built modular housing that are environmentally friendly. Canadians don't want to live in shipping containers, you blanking blank. Again, I'm not going to rat on that. I'm not going to rain on that parade because, again, if you look at the concept of this, people need shelters. I don't think people are going to. I understand the frustration, but at the same time, I've also seen a lot of people do wonderful things with shipping containers. I've seen a lot of these tiny houses, and they're actually pretty extortionate. Like, when you look at the tiny homes and you look at like how well it's designed to look like a bigger concept when it isn't, it's pretty remarkable. So I'm not gonna harp against that. But I understand this guy's frustration. And here's where this gets even more frustrating, is when Mark Carney is making a PR statement about it. Watch.
Major challenge with housing construction in this country is that by using conventional methods, our construction is just too slow for the housing supply that we need to meet our current needs. It's also too expensive and too heavily reliant on traditional on-site methods. We need to transform the way we build by harnessing the latest technologies. And that's why Build Canada Homes will prioritize the use of cost-efficient and modern methods of construction.
Again, I just find it hilarious that we need to transform the way of building housing, and he's talking about cost-effective measures. But the first thing that we have to do is have an entire federal agency created to build more homes. That doesn't sound cost-effective. If you're creating an entire federal agency, that means you're going to need employees. That means you're going to need an office. That means you're going to need equipment. Is it like a cubicle space, an office area? Like what does this agency have to do with building homes? That doesn't make sense. So he's touting that it's cost effective. We're going to transform the need to build more homes, but it just seems like it's already getting suspicious of money laundering. The way that they create agencies to deal with crisis, just like homelessness. You know, all these cities that budget to deal with homelessness, and then you realize, oh, that money doesn't actually go to the homeless. It goes to all these different outputs and different agencies and different sectors that are in charge of the homelessness. But by the time they actually get to resorting to homelessness, they're out of money. Maybe something to look into. Maybe when someone's dealing with a nonprofit charity that they're not making $250,000 annual salary. Maybe there's something to look into. But back to this.
Including factory build, modular, and mass timber. Factory build housing means homes, or large parts of homes, built in controlled factory settings, with precision, with advanced machinery, and benefiting from the latest technology. These homes can be standardized, mass-produced, and once completed, shipped to site and assembled in days or weeks rather than months or years.
I find it, like, when have we ever used this kind of language? Oh, we got to mass-produce homes. We got to transform the way we've always built homes. What? What do you mean mass? What do you mean transform? What do you mean it's going to be cost effective and mass produced? That, to me, that sounds like you're going to 3D print the houses, which Mark Carney has bragged about, by the way. Mark Carney has bragged about how automation, how great it is, how much of an asset it would be to, help with the manufacturing process, which means you're not going to actually have Canadians building Canadian homes. So that's why I'm very suspicious of this whole setup. And there's even more to this story because this guy, Frank Vaughn, does a breakdown of that announcement we just watched. And he says, fake. Mark Carney's manufactured housing announcement, they faked the whole thing. It was planned weeks ahead of time. So what exactly does he mean by this? Why does he suspect that the announcement is fake? Well, judging by just the screen grab here, something looks a bit askewed to that building that's magically behind someone like Mark Carney. It's almost like it's a movie set. But here's his take on this, and I just sped it up a bit because it's a fairly lengthy video, but listen.
Announcing that the federal government's going to be building these factory homes and putting them on federal land. Basically, commie housing, wartime housing, if you want to use different terminology. But the fact of the matter is, this is actually just a public relations campaign for companies that will directly benefit Mark Carney's portfolio. This is a man using the Prime Minister's office to enhance his portfolio value. And he's using the taxpayers' dollars to create this, what you see here, this whole thing, all these people.
Remember I said Brookfield's attached to this. That's why they're now they're going to deal with housing. This is, again, something that they've said for a decade now. Which is why every time I hear affordable housing, I grit my teeth. Because every single time, for over a decade, it's been nothing but an empty promise. But now here's Mark Carney. Oh, we're definitely getting on board with it. Why is that? Because Brookfield's now involved? Oh, go figure.
standing there organically, the modular housing, the flag. Let me give you some private insight into this. I've done some digging into this particular press conference, but it was actually an email from a viewer that kind of set things in alignment, and you need to understand how fake everything you see from this government is, and you're paying for all of it. I unfortunately live in Carney's riding. This is from my contact, and they are connected in the construction industry. They noticed that there was heavy equipment working to make a granular pad on a hydro easement on Maryville Road in Ottawa. Now, this person in construction didn't see the job posting, so this was a tenderless contract that was awarded apparently to Taggart Construction. That part I have not confirmed, but that's my contact says it was Taggart Construction that poured the pad. You can check into that, but the pad wasn't there before. Once the pad was completed, a crane came in to put this large removable modular complex, which Mark Carney did a photo op of to promote affordable housing. The next day, after the pictures were done, the crane was back, removing the module, back on the trucks, and took them away. But nobody seems to be talking about the crazy amount of money and planning that would be required. So, at the very least, we have the federal government, apparently for a photo op for Mark Carney, or some other interested party, maybe Brookfield, maybe G-Fans, maybe the connected companies with them, that got a tenderless contract, potentially from the federal government, to pour that pad, to bring in a crane, to hike the Canadian flag, to put up the signs, to put up the modular home, and the whole thing was Hollywood-style cinematography. You see it on screen. This is the inside baseball. This is what it looks like. And you have to ask yourself, how often are they doing this with your money? This is a man parachuted into this country, riding roughshod over 250,000 votes that were disenfranchised in the Liberal leadership race. A contest that was fixed by every possible measure that you can imagine. Statistically completely improbable, Mark Carney parachuted in from outside of this country, becomes prime minister. I do believe he was elected. I think most of the Liberal base, their minds are mush. Most of these people are the TV generation. These are the self-entitled baby boomers who just don't know how to evolve and don't want to evolve. And this isn't all baby boomers. This is a significant segment of that population,
which I think partially is to blame for the trade war and the manufacturing of the elbows up narrative that people just took religiously, blindly, without actually knowing a thing or two about Mark Carney. I talk to people that are, Mark Carney fans, and they have no idea who this man is. They have no idea his background. They have no idea. I mentioned about the fact that he wrote a book called Values that is almost like a manifesto of the way he's going to govern Canada. And I take, expositions out of that book to describe how Mark Carney is transforming Canada into a dark path. No one has no idea what the hell I'm talking about. They have no idea that, Mark Carney wrote a book? Yeah. When he was the governor of the Bank of England. Wait, he was the governor of the Bank of England? Yeah, you didn't know that? He was that after the governor of the bank. Oh, he was the governor of the Bank of Canada? Wait a second. I didn't know any of this. Yeah, because you didn't ask and you weren't allowed to know these things. You were told to elbows up, do the chicken dance, and blame everything on Trump. And magically, this guy who appeared out of nowhere says he's going to fix the problems by the same party that created these problems is now still part of the government. Your country has been hijacked, folks. I don't know what else to say. People that still think that Trump's going to take over 51st state. I hate to break the news to you. Your country's already been hijacked. We don't have sovereignty. Canada is not controlled by Canadians. That all this is a stunt. All this is a stunt. And this guy is explaining in detail how they're coordinating efforts to, again, prop up the narrative that they're building all these manufactured homes, these wartime homes in record time. We're transforming the industry. But first, we're going to create a secret agency, and then we're going to shuffle some money around, and then Brookfield's going to get some, their hands on it. They're going to might acquire a shipping container company to manufacture these homes, and then they're going to build up their asset portfolio, and we'll see if they're actually going to be homes built. Elaborate scam. And why I despise more Mark Carney than Justin Trudeau is that, yeah, Justin Trudeau was an idiot. Justin Trudeau was the Pee Wee Herman of our parliament. And he was pretty much elected based on name recognition. Like, you hear Trudeau, that's, synonymous. It's like how, George W. got elected in States. It was synonymous. It was the name recognition. It's the name brand. Mark Carney, however, I find him more sinister and I find him more appalling because this is a guy who knows what he's doing. Justin Trudeau didn't know what he was doing. He was just getting, connections with his advisors and being told to do this because that's, he's a good little boy. Mark Carney, though, he is sinister. He knows what he's doing. Again, he wrote a book that pretty much manifestos the highlight of how he's going to govern, how he needs to take control of Canada, how he needs to transform people's behaviors. That's not me saying that. That's in his book. In his book, he states that. So that's why I take more. I find him more repulsive than someone like Justin Trudeau. Even though Justin Trudeau, yes, a lot of the problems are caused by his reign over the last, 10 years. But Mark Carney, this guy who just, as this guy is even explaining, parachuted out of thin air and pretending to fix the problems. Oh, I'm going to be the savior for Canada. I'm like a saint. Everything bad is Trump's fault. Elbows up. I'm here to save you. And here he is doing a photo op, a Hollywood set photo op to, again, please the CBC viewers, the CTV viewers. They know that this is fake. They know this is phony. But the cameras are going to capture it. And the people watching this at home are going to believe this. Anyway, let's see the rest of it.
Rise of the liberal base. They're not modern. They don't have their heads in the real world. Their view is very selfish and very narcissistic. And it can actually be summed up in one comment below. And I don't know if this is a baby boomer, but the comment just rings true. Not a bad idea. Hope it works. That is building these coffin homes, these modular homes by the thousands and jamming probably mostly new Canadians into them while everybody else just gets to scrape by, none of which will solve the problem. 4,000 houses are a drop in the bucket when Canada is short by millions. And the real problem, mass immigration, the IMP program, the Temporary Foreign Workers Program, all the student visas, all the visa overstays that are running loose in Canada right now and are not being deported. That's your housing crisis. That's your social services crisis. That's the everything crisis this will not solve. But this will likely lead to a net increase in the value of the portfolio known as Mark Carney's conflicts of interest. Canada's being looted, folks, right in front of your eyes. And there's people who say, I hope it works. I hope it works out. It's a good idea. Let's give it a try. This fakery, this standing before the eyes of the nation and mocking you, rubbing your face in it because they can. They can get away with it because there's a whole segment of the Canadian population, largely concentrated in Ontario and Quebec, not all, but many, who are holding this whole thing back, this awakening process, this understanding that the nation's been lost, the nation's been looted, that your civil rights don't exist, that anything that you think you own, you don't, can be taken away by the stroke of a pen, this rulership of government, which is not parliament. They're rubbing your face in it with an open PR campaign for the continued looting of this country while you suffer and are forced to pay for it. It's disgusting.
There you go. Now you know the rest of the story. So that was Frank Vaughn. Good catch on that. We should see if we can reach out and have an interview. Yeah. It's everything that I've told people. It's things I've already told to people. Like, your country's been hijacked. The reason Mark Carney got elected, if you want to use that term loosely, got elected, you could see by the electoral map, it's the business interests. It's the wealthy individuals that live on the strips of, Toronto beaches and Bay Street and parts of Montreal. It's not the rest of the country. It's not the rest of even the province. You look at Ontario, that whole map was blue except for specific areas. Why is that? Why is it specific areas? Oh, that's right. That's where the wealthy individuals that are going to capitalize off this resides. And they want someone like Mark Carney because it's good for their portfolio. It's not good for the country. Not good for me. Not good for you. Not good for anybody. but it's good for their investments. That's all these people care about. Investments, portfolio. They want to get more bang for their buck. So they get a private equity prime minister selected and take over the prime ministership of this country and hollow it out. Hollow out all the assets, liquidate everything, squeeze all the very essence of what makes Canada Canada, all for investments, all for the investment class portfolios. Sound familiar? Because that's what they do to fast food joints. That's what they do to restaurants. That's what they. That's how the world is unfortunately functioning. It's not democracies. It's not individual countries. To paraphrase, I've used this scene before, and I'll say it again. To paraphrase the 1976 movie Network, the world is the transfer of international dollars and a few bankers. That's what it is. You don't have countries anymore. You have a select tiny group of billionaire bankers, philanthropists, tycoons that run and operate every aspect of our lives and the international flow of dollars. And that's what we're seeing here. And that's why this affordable housing project always looks suspicious to me. And it became even more suspicious that Mark Carney is suddenly getting on board with this. No doubtably because Brookfield's going to benefit from this. And they need someone like Mark Carney to sell this idea to you instead of a clown like Justin Trudeau, who can barely finish the sentence. So, there you go, folks. The disaster of Canada. The utter disaster of Canada. I hope people wake up more and more people decide, hey, we need to get together. We need to stop this divide. We need to stop the left versus right crap. Come together and realize we're all getting destroyed by this. Everybody, regardless of who you are. Come together, unite, and let's actually have a good fight against the true evil that's lurking in this country.